The Lawyer's Masterplan, a battle for the vault and the ultimate revenge. A lawyer's brilliant revenge on a greedy landlord. We all know that landlords can be real jerks, but if you think residential landlords are bad, wait until you meet commercial landlords. Those guys are in a league of their own when it comes to being ruthless and underhanded. This story is about one such landlord and how I, a lawyer, got the best of him. It was back in the 90s when I used to grab lunch at this restaurant in the basement of my office building. The place was called The Vault, and it had this massive old bank vault that was still intact from when the building had been a bank. The vault was so huge that they could fit a few tables inside it, and it became the restaurant's signature feature. It was kind of like dining inside a giant safe, surrounded by rows of old, gleaming safe deposit boxes. One day as I was finishing my lunch, the restaurant owner, a guy I'd gotten to know a bit, pulled me aside. "The landlord is driving me crazy," he said. "The landlord drives everyone crazy," I replied. "What's he done this time?" I wasn't surprised. I was sharing office space with an older lawyer, Aaron, and our landlord was constantly causing trouble. We hated him, and he hated us. For commercial tenants, landlords don't need court orders to evict you for late rent. They simply change the locks, and you only find out when you try to open the door and your key doesn't work anymore. This landlord had pulled that stunt on several tenants already, and he was a master at threatening to change locks over the smallest disputes. "This time it's weird," the restaurant owner continued. "He's demanding all kinds of extra rent charges, stuff like snow removal and parking lot repairs, things that go back years. I don't even know what half of this stuff is." I took a look at the letter the landlord had sent. It was filled with a list of bizarre charges: snow removal, parking lot repairs, common area maintenance. The list went on, and at the end, there was the usual threat: change the locks if the rent isn't paid. "So what happened?" I asked, already seeing where this was headed. "The landlord knows I'm moving the restaurant. He's trying to squeeze as much money out of me as possible before I go. Plus, there's the vault," he said. "Wait, what do you mean, the vault?" "The lease says I have to remove it. The vault weighs over 100 tons and it costs a fortune to remove. But the landlord is being a total jerk about it. If I leave it behind, he says he'll sue me." "Send me your lease. Let me take a look," I told him. So after lunch, I got the lease in my office. When I read through the lease, it was as bad as the restaurant owner had described. The lease was some ancient contract, a renewal of a renewal of a renewal, originally signed by a bank right after World War II, and somehow this restaurant had inherited the liability to remove the vault at the end of the lease. I could tell right away that the case was hopeless. The restaurant owner was personally liable for removing the vault, and it would cost a fortune to do so. But then, as I read through the lease, I had an idea. The landlord was a real jerk, always making unreasonable demands, always threatening people, and I couldn't stand him. So I decided to help the restaurant owner, not out of kindness, but because the landlord deserved to be taken down a peg. I called the restaurant owner. "I'm screwed, aren't I?" he asked. "I'm calling to hear that there's no way out." "That's what my lawyer said." "Well, I can save you, but it's going to cost you," I told him. "How much?" he asked. "5,000 in legal fees and an additional 1,000 for a real estate agent," I said. "A real estate agent? Why?" "You'll see. Just send the money and I'll handle the rest." Less than an hour later, the check arrived. I headed over to my colleague Aaron's office. "I need a real estate agent," I said. "You buying a house?" Aaron asked, flipping through his Rolodex. "Nope," I said. "Selling?" "Nope." Aaron raised an eyebrow. "You pulling one of your stunts again?" "Yep. But don't worry, this one won't get you in trouble." Aaron, who had connections with every shady person in town, gave me the name and number of an agent, and the next day I paid him a visit. We agreed on terms, I handed him the documents, and he took his fee. A few days later, I was back at the vault for lunch. The restaurant owner greeted me. "The landlord's here," he said, looking worried. "Why?" "He's having lunch and he's being an asshole. Let's sit in the vault room so I don't have to look at him." We went into the vault room, closed the door, and had a consultation while eating pasta and drinking wine. "We're demanding the vault back," I said, passing him the documents. "The vault?" "He's not going to let me take that." "Oh, he will," I said. "We're demanding he release everything, including the vault, within 7 days." The restaurant owner was shocked. Are you serious? You think this is going to work? I guess we'll find out soon enough. The landlord has already been served the demand letter. The restaurant owner dropped his wine glass in surprise. You already gave it to him? He said, eyes wide. He stormed over to the landlord's table, furious. I followed him calmly. The landlord was sitting there enjoying his lunch, a massive rack of lamb, and grinning like the greedy fool he was. My client needs an answer today, I said without any hesitation. We've demanded the vault back, and we need it released immediately. The landlord wiped his greasy mouth. Your client can forget about the vault, he said, laughing. I'm going to need that in writing, I replied coolly, because my client might sue. He was smug. Sue all you like. You'll get nothing from me. You'll have a formal response by the end of the day. Now go away and let me finish my lunch. Later that day, we received a letter from the landlord claiming ownership of the vault and saying he would not release it. I showed the letter to the restaurant owner. How the hell did you do that? He asked. Trade secret, I said with a grin. The next month, the restaurant moved out. The landlord thought he'd won until he found out that the vault was still there. He had no idea what hit him. When I showed up at my office, the landlord was fuming. He stormed into my office furious. You tricked me. That agent was all part of your plan to make me keep the vault. I had a deal lined up with a bank to rent the space, and now it's gone. Well, that's unfortunate, I said calmly, but I really don't know what you're talking about. Don't play dumb. I know it was you behind this whole thing. I'm going to sue you, the restaurant, and that agent. Good luck with that, I said. You don't have a valid contract to sue on. It's just a non-binding letter of intent. I left his office with a smile. A year later, the space remained empty. The landlord never did find a new tenant, and every time I passed by that building, I couldn't help but grin. That's what happens when you mess with the wrong people, especially if you're a greedy landlord.